Um, sorry. Yeah, so the first thing that we have for you guys is an icebreaker. So if I guess I can call out the name and then you guys can unmute and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
So starting off with Abhi. Oh, also, I think like it's gonna go in alphabetical order. So. Okay, we'll come back to him. Anshul. Craig.
Hi, I'm Craig from Motorola Solutions. Really interested in the topic today, so I just wanted to listen in. And I actually was a computer science major here at U of I. And one thing I've learned about myself during the pandemic, patience. Need to have more patience.
That's true. Alyssa.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. I'm a junior in electrical engineering. One new thing I've learned about myself during the pandemic, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I guess I've like rediscovered a love for reading since I've had more time. So that's about it.
Kim.
Hi everyone, my name is Kim. I'm currently a junior. I'm a transfer student. I'm in computer engineering, but I'm trying to switch over to electrical engineering. One thing that I learned about myself is that I really miss going to class and talking to people. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can agree on that. I think we all do. Next we have Laura.
Me? I'm happy to. I'm Laura Blyle. I'm with the Research Parks. I'm going to be part of the panel today. So my major back in the day was journalism, but that's been a long time ago. But we'll talk about that later. One new thing I've learned about myself during the pandemic is that I've spent a lot more time that I can spend a lot more time at home than I ever imagined possible. So I've never, we are usually running around like crazy. So being forced to stay at home, it hasn't been the worst thing.
That's nice. Mara.
Hi, my name's Mara. I'm a junior in electrical engineering. And I think one thing I learned about myself in the pandemic is how long I could stay sitting in like one seating. It was really impressive, but also kind of sad. But yeah, that's what I learned.
Mary. Mary. Okay, moving on. Razel.
Hi, my name is Razel Lieberman. I am a software developer at Motorola Solutions. I'm on the panel today. I was a computer science major at the University of Wisconsin. And one thing that I've learned about myself, I really miss having an office to go to for work. I am not the kind of person who likes the work from home thing. Every once in a while, but not an every day.
Me too. Ribov. Above. Okay, Rishabh.
Hi guys, my name is Rishabh. I'm a computer engineering major. I'm a senior. I'm actually currently the corporate director for Pulse. And I think one thing I've learned about myself is, I think someone else mentioned this, but like how much I actually enjoy like meeting new people and just like talking to random people. And obviously when you're at home, you really can't do anything like that. So yeah.
Sri.
Hi, this is Sri Soumya Kanapurthy. I am a senior software engineer at Capital One, and I'm one of the panel members here today. I did my master's in electronics. And one thing that I learned during the pandemic is I can handle way more stress that I ever thought I could. I have two little ones, 3-year and 1-year-old, and then I also work alongside taking care of kids, family. So I figured that I am capable of handling a lot of stress.
Okay, that's nice. Tejal? Tejal? Okay, Tejas.
Okay. Can you guys see me? Hold up. Or hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, hi guys. I'm Tejas. I'm a sophomore in computer engineering. And one new thing I've learned about myself in the pandemic is I really love exploring Champaign. I've been like running and skateboarding about like everywhere in a 5-mile vicinity, and it's really made me realize how small our university is.
Yeah, that's true. But now the weather is getting bad. Okay, I think that's it. If I called on anyone and like you forgot to unmute or anything, you can unmute yourselves now. Like Abhi, Anshul, anyone. Okay, I think we're good. You want to do the icebreaker as well? Oh yeah, we'll do the icebreaker as well. So my name is Pooja. I'm a junior in computer engineering, and one new thing that I learned about myself during the pandemic is that even in the winter, I really do miss going to class. And like I know someone else said it, but you know I definitely second that. That's really important for for everyone's mental state.
Yeah, I'm Pakhi Gupta. I'm a junior in computer engineering as well. And something I learned about myself during the pandemic is I need to keep things moving. Like I think I miss people a lot. Seeing just random people, just generally seeing public, seeing crowds. I miss that a lot.
I think that since everyone here is from like an electronics or like a computer background, we can all agree that we spend so much of our day looking at our screen that like going somewhere and interacting with people, that was the one break that we got from our screen. And now look at us. Anyways, before like we start off with me introducing the topic and us introducing like what we're going to be talking about today, one thing that I will say is that this is meant to be like a very personal thing. A lean in is just a discussion that we're supposed to have amongst ourselves. So please feel free to open your videos. In fact, I encourage it. Open your videos, unmute yourselves whenever you want, and this is a discussion. It's much easier to have a discussion when we can see your faces and we can see your expressions. So please, if you're able to, please do so. And yeah, okay. So the topic of our lean in today is imposter syndrome. So I guess I'll just start off with like in introducing what it is. And basically, it's a psychological pattern where the person who's experiencing imposter syndrome has doubts or has doubts about their skills, their talents, or anything in like regarding the topic that's being discussed. So, for example, like if I'm in a parallel programming class and I'm in a group of like 3 students, I would have imposter syndrome if I was unsure about what I was saying. And like I'm scared of talking or I'm scared of exposing myself because I think that if I do, what I'm saying will be so wrong that people will think that I'm a fraud or that I'm not as smart. So yeah, some of the symptoms, I have them like listed out there. They're like feeling out of place, feeling that like your achievements aren't enough, or like getting an A in a class doesn't mean that, for example, you really know what you studied or you know the topic, and always doubting yourself, doubting your ideas, doubting what comes out of your mouth, and comparing yourself to your peers around you, taking on extra work just to learn more and to be constantly trying to prove yourself, anxiety, and sometimes in extreme cases it can even result in depression. And I mean, basically, me, Paki, and Severa, we kind of agreed on this topic, and it's a very common topic that we have at Lean-ins. But since this is Women in Tech Day, obviously not just women, we all experience this, but women in the tech field kind of like they're prone to this even more because there are lots of people that undermine us or think that we're less capable, and especially in the past. So this is a pretty common topic that we have. But despite it being common, it's also like a really good topic, because I think that we as women, and even like men, students, all of us, we've all been put in a place or put in a position at least once in our life where we've experienced imposter syndrome, whether that be at a class, or during a project, or during an internship. We all kind of have experienced this at some point. So we thought that it would be a good discussion topic, because at least like it's something that everyone has a story or something to share about. So in order to begin the discussion and to like kind of start off the lean in, we prepare guiding questions so that we can kind of stir the conversation up a bit. So these are the guiding questions. And so I'm gonna start off with the first one. I want you guys to like unmute. Please feel free to unmute and just like start sharing your experiences on like whether you've experienced imposter syndrome before, and like only if you're comfortable sharing your own personal stories, and kind of talk about how you experienced it, how you kind of maybe you didn't even know that what you were experiencing was called imposter syndrome until I just explained the definition. So kind of talk about that, talk about how you got through it, how you helped yourself get through it, and what you think, like how you kind of avoid putting yourself in that position again.
I can start. So I actually was told about this session about like a week and a half ago from one of the recruiters here at Motorola. And I was like drawn to it because I actually like within the past couple of weeks have been kind of experiencing this. So on my team, we do agile development. So on each team, that means we have someone called the Scrum Master, who is kind of in between developers and management and keeps things on track and helps resolve any problems. And they're kind of like a team leader in a way. So our Scrum Master told us that at the beginning of January, that at the end of January, he is moving to a new team for a new opportunity. And the manager of the team came to me and wanted me to take over. So obviously that was a great opportunity, and I was happy that I was able to take it, and I've started taking over some of those responsibilities. But I'm fairly new to the team. I started just in 2019 after I graduated college, so I'm one of the youngest ones on the team. I have some of the least amount of experience, so I just kept kind of asking like, why me? And it's really hard in a situation like that to not have those thoughts, but I figured that it was a better opportunity, and there was probably a reason that they asked me over someone else. And I mean, I believe that reason to be, my people skills, and there's a lot more, interpersonal communication, which I think is one of my strong suits, especially as a software developer. I know it can be a stereotype that, we like to be in our computers all the time, but it is true for some people that they don't like the part of the job where you're talking to other people, and I really like that part. So I have been going through this a little bit, and it's actually gotten better recently since I've had a couple meetings with my manager, and it definitely helps to hear her reassure me, saying like, I like what you're doing so far, stuff like that. And that's already helped me, kind of calm down about that a little bit. And even some other people from the team have been saying like, I think everything's going well. It was a really seamless transition. So definitely just hearing it from other people helps for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that with any kind of change, it is when imposter syndrome really comes out, like kind of when you're transitioning from high school to college, when you're interning, when you're starting a new job, that's kind of when you realize like, oh, I might be a little bit unsure about myself. Like I think I speak on behalf of both of us when I say that being a woman, like coming into computer engineering at U of I, like it was a little bit daunting at first. Sometimes like there are like a lot of people that you don't mix well with, and you're honestly, like for lack of a better word, you get scared of sounding dumb and like sounding like you don't know anything, especially because you're a woman and you think you might be stigmatized because of that. So yeah. Does anyone else want to share any of like their personal stories or personal experiences?
I know
Yeah,
Miriam
sure.
had her hand raised. Oh, okay. So you want to go, and then Miriam, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. I was actually going to talk about me transitioning from high school to college, just like Pooja was talking about. Um, my high school was like fairly small, and we had like one or two engineering classes where I was like the only woman in there, but it was different in the way that like the classes were small, so you knew everyone there and they knew you, and you had multiple classes with them. And so coming to a bigger college like U of I, and then walking into a classroom and seeing like everyone that you've never met in your entire life was fairly daunting. And then I think imposter syndrome hit, and I didn't know it at the time that it was imposter syndrome. It was just kind of like, I don't know if I'm as smart as these people, especially like the first week when there's a couple people trying to show off, uh, and they like raise their hands and they ask about subjects we haven't even learned yet. That was definitely really scary for me, coming in and not realizing what was really happening and being like, am I already behind? Like, how do these people know these things? So yeah, I think it's probably a universal experience.
Yes, I agree. Like the first week of classes, oh God, I remember people asking questions about words I hadn't even heard before, and I was like, "What's happening?" And like, I think that the most important thing is like finding your comfort zone. Finding someone who like you're comfortable working with, who you feel like shares the same wavelength as you. Like whether that's as a master's student, an undergrad, at work, at your workplace, like whatever, there's someone who you can communicate with. And
Yes.
Sri, I think you wanted to speak as well on this.
Yes. So again, this term imposter syndrome was pretty new to me, but like everyone else, I have experienced this quite a number of times in my experience, and especially I at this time I want to particularly talk about my first job. Like it happens whenever a transition happens. So my first job at IBM, I mastered in electronics as my major, and all my fellows who were recruited from the colleges were from a computer science background. So even though I fared well in my day-to-day activities, I always had this feeling at the back of my mind, like, am I competent enough? Because I'm from an electronics background and I don't have the same kind of in-depth skill that these computer science grads have. And it was bothering me way along, but slowly and steadily as I progressed and started to see success, I figured that it is not as difficult as I thought it would be. And also everybody has their own area of expertise. So even though I'm from an electronics background and did not have that in-depth coding skill that other computer students had, I had a different potential. I was very good at communicating. I was very good at articulating the business aspects and translating them to a technology framework, which probably others did not have. So it helped me grow, and people started seeing the different value that I bring into the team, a different perspective. And I was being respected. I brought in value to the team, to the organization, and slowly and steadily I was able to overcome that. And it doesn't go away and not come ever again. I wouldn't say that it goes away and never comes again. It did come again after I transitioned. Even in my job, like 10 years, I worked in one technology framework called mainframes, and then I transitioned to a Java developer. And then when I was working with a 12-year experienced Java developer, there were instances when I felt like, okay, I don't know this background that this professional person knows, because I worked for 12 years, but I worked in a different technology, and my understanding is quite different from what my colleagues' understanding is. So, but slowly and steadily, definitely, we once we gain confidence and can speak up, make mistakes, and learn from mistakes, it gives us more confidence to move on, and that definitely helps in overcoming this syndrome, and it did in my case.
Yeah. I mean, like if when you read about imposter syndrome in general, when you read about like the psychological impacts or whatever that it has on like on us. That's like the first thing that they tell you, is that like whenever change comes about, like unsurety comes about. And normally like the transitions that like even you were speaking about, from like using one software to using another, going from one company to going to another, going from one school to going to another, all of these involve shifting to like a new set of either people or a new set of things. And as humans, if we don't know people, or we're not familiar with our surroundings, we're not familiar with even like this framework, what happens is that we don't have trust in new things. Trust comes by building. But because, I mean, like even like a simple example like UIUC, like what Mariam was saying about the first week of classes, you didn't know if it was suitable for you, if you were smart enough. But like you have to understand, you have to have trust in the university, in the dean of engineering, in knowing that like these people, they know your background, and they've recruited you because they think that you can do well here. You are like you are a type of student that they expect and they have faith in that you will do well here, whether that's your manager, or someone who wanted you to switch roles, or someone who brought you in because you were in an electronics background. Like they probably knew that you would bring a different perspective to the team. And like I guess that we just have to remember to keep that in mind, that just because we don't know these people, it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing, because they really do.
Yeah, going off of that, I know it's not even just like when I start new things, it's even now in college when I do new things, like for example, if I just ever like apply to any position, like anything, I start undermining it almost immediately. I'm like, oh, nobody applied to this, which is why they had to give me the position. And like when I found out about imposter syndrome was like pretty early on in high school, and I would hear about these women are like, they're in these top positions and they're getting these awards. How could you do this, like do amazing things, and feel like you're not doing anything or you don't deserve it? But seeing my friends telling me like, you sound ridiculous, Savera, that nobody applied in such a big university for this one thing. You deserved it, which is why you got it. So even now, I feel like sometimes it happens quite often. For me at least, I don't know if it's just like the pandemic or the situation we're in, but it happens more frequently with me these days. But I do have people to be like, you're being silly. So I think it's good to sort of try and recognize that the best as you can, and sort of to hit the second bullet point, to mitigate it. I think the best way to help mitigate this feeling of imposter syndrome is to talk to your peers and your friends and other people in your major, and like as we are here, all of these women in tech and some of our men in tech as well, to help and support us, and let us know when we're being a little silly, and that our feelings, that it's it's just the nature of being in tech, and you do deserve all your accolades and everything you do. So I think that's just important to have.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like when you touched on the second point. Like another thing that I think that would really help mitigate imposter syndrome is like personally, it's kind of like when you're starting a new class and then you have your first quiz or you have your first assignment, and you're able to study for it and do well on it, and you kind of see what's expected of you. Or if we're talking about a workplace, you get assigned like your first individual task or your first individual project, and you're able to see like, oh, I can apply myself and do this, and like, oh, if I learn how to use this, and I use my knowledge from, I don't know, like my master's background or whatever, I can do the tasks that they're giving me. I think that like knowing that you have the knowledge and that you can apply the knowledge is something else that really helps. Does anyone else like have any other ideas of like how we can mitigate it in work and in school?
I just wanted to say that a couple of things. I think Savera's point about the pandemic exacerbating imposter syndrome. I think that we're all sort of, isolated and in our heads a lot more. And I think that that's very true, that that this has been a time where people may experience that even more so. I also think that there's this atmosphere of people saying, oh, I spent my extra time during the pandemic learning how to, I'm now an expert on Python, R, and, whatever, insert language here or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you know what, honestly, I just tried to survive. So, I don't think that, I think that there's a lot of that going around. And I think that it's okay to be where you're at and not necessarily have to fall into that trap of feeling like you should have achieved something that you didn't, or it wasn't where you were at the time. I do think that there's, kind of to your second point about schools and workplaces mitigating imposter syndrome. I'm a big fan of mentorship, only I'm not necessarily a big fan of this idea that there's one magical mentor out there for you. I have found mentorship in many, many different places and spaces, and along the lines of things I miss during the pandemic is that opportunity to go out to lunch or coffee with all of my different mentors and pick their brains about different places and spaces that they've been in and different decision-making trees that they have made. So I do think that that's important. And I think, like I said, I don't know, for some people, one mentor may work, but I think in my world, at least, I've experienced many different mentors for many different kinds of reasons. And I think that that's something that can be facilitated both in school and even in your own organization, as well as in the workplace.
I'll agree to that point. Hi, everybody. Kirsten Phelps from AbbVie. I'm the associate site lead there, and have previous degrees in communications and education, and just most recently information sciences. And to Laura's point, I think that's really key. I have experienced imposter syndrome, and it would come and go. I think that has been mentioned before, that, anytime you kind of make a transition or in a new space, you kind of have these feelings crop up. And thinking about yourself holistically, I have found has really helped. And I think that mentors and having a variety of mentors can provide you that perspective that I know I am very hard on myself. And it sounds like other people have very high expectations of themselves as well. That sometimes I know I can't trust my own evaluation of how well I did or thought I did on something. And so I have other people who know the quality of my work and the different ways in which I can contribute to projects, to Shreya's point, like in terms of, and also Rizal, like having these kind of non-technical skills that are of value to a team in a way that, maybe having technical expertise, is different, is really helpful. And the other thing too, I think, is providing and giving yourself the opportunity to have spaces where you're doing things where you can feel what not having imposter syndrome is like, can be really affirming. I teach boxing here in town at a women's boxing gym. And that's the first time where I was like, oh, why do I love this so much? And it's like, because I have full confidence in kind of my abilities and I enjoy it. And I realized it was the first time that I hadn't ever come into a situation where I had to teach and like kind of perform and sort of feel this like underlying anxiety about like, oh, how are people perceiving me? How are I being judged? And so I think as you're kind of thinking about yourself and all of the things that you can bring to, your different positions, pay attention to the stuff that you also enjoy, and that you kind of get benefit from, and pay attention to what that feels like to kind of be doing that, and try to kind of pull some of those thoughts with you when you're kind of in some spaces where maybe you aren't as comfortable, you feel like imposter syndrome might be a little bit more present, and just give yourself a little bit more kind of flexibility and freedom to realize that you are adding value in different ways.
Yeah. Going off of what Kirsten and Laura said about one, finding a space in which that mitigates imposter syndrome because it's so free of that, and mentors. Personally, I have like a research professor who serves as my mentor, but I also have this this research, this master's student who I go to whenever I need any sort of advice because she's great. And a little bit of advertising. She's going to be speaking on the Women in Academia panel today. So highly recommend stopping by and hearing her speak about her experiences because she's great. I love her. So I feel like it is important to just have several perspectives of different levels. So like my professor, he's a professor. His advice would be different to me based on just his experiences. And for me, it's just been nice to have like his perspective of, it's bigger picture. So some of my little worries, he'll just be like, he's like, why are you worrying so much about this? It'll be fine. And it's great to have that to help mitigate some of the inner worries that come with, imposter syndrome and like, is this little thing going to ruin everything? No, it's not. It'll be fine. And then my graduate student who helps out, who mentors me in another way, Megan, she'll be like, she'll understand better what I'm going through because she's gone through it as an undergrad. And she'll be like, I know how you feel and it'll be okay. And because she's experienced it and she'll know how to help me through that. So I agree that multiple mentors are important and they have helped me battle some inner anxieties that I've had about, not being able to be enough or am I doing things correctly? And to advertise Pulse a little bit, joining Pulse has helped, make some of the daunting parts of being at a big university and being in such a competitive department, feeling like you don't belong in these classes where even in the middle of the semester, people will be saying things and I won't understand what that means. And I'll panic. I'm like, am I going to fail this class if I don't know what they're saying? But being in a smaller community of such great and supporting other students who are passionate about putting together great events really brings out the greater side and the more familial and community side of this tough major and like the tough engineering environment. So highly recommend also finding something you love within your major or your department. And that helps just make things seem more digestible and less daunting.
Yeah, so Vera, like that's really true. Like even what Kirsten said about finding something that you feel like you can kind of be yourself and you're not going to be criticized or you're not going to be compared to, because even something like boxing, just because like for example like with me like computer engineering I know like will be my job or like it's the thing that I study, I feel so much more pressured within it than like if I were to do something else, like for example like if I wanted to dance, because I know that dancing is my hobby and it's not my job and it's not something I have to make a living out of, and I know it's not something that I have to compete with people against. Just because of that, like it automatically like, and like if I were to join a dance club, I wouldn't feel imposter syndrome as strongly as if I joined a new class. So like I think that was a really important topic to touch on. And like I feel that way with VC, for example. Like for me, I joined it when I was a freshman. And the reason that I joined it was because it was so nice to be surrounded by such positive people who wanted to help each other. And I've learned that like as like becoming, I'm the academic director, so like I do office hours and stuff related to classes. So I love like having the opportunity to help people who are confused or who need help or who need guidance, or who need assistance in just starting their journey off in college, starting it off the right way, meeting positive people, having positive resources, whether that means like actual resources, like, stuff like helping homework and things like that, or even something like this where you just need a space to talk to, or you need somebody to talk to, because that itself is a very important resource, which is why like even in VC we consider these lean-ins so important, because they're really like a point of reflection, and they really get your mind thinking about your work, but in a very different way than your work gets you thinking about your work.
I just want to add really quickly that sometimes like an environment in a school or a workplace that's competitive can foster imposter syndrome. So sometimes we kind of don't have a choice if we're going into a very like competitive environment. and we find ourselves put into it without kind of wanting to. And then you kind of see yourself try to compete or relate yourself to other people's experiences. And then you never really know if they're saying what they've experienced. So I've had plenty of experiences where people come up to me and like ask me about their grades and tell me about theirs without me even wanting to hear about it. And so I think that kind of environment places imposter syndrome and allows your confidence to definitely drop, even though you didn't place yourself in that situation. Um, so I think that's important to note. And then also going back to the community and mentorship aspect that you guys were kind of talking about, normalizing not doing well or talking about imposter syndrome and talking about mental health is also important. So, and not everyone is perfect all the time. And then in a kind of environment that's a little bit toxic or very competitive, it's very easy to get lost in the positives and see people doing so well and then kind of compare that back on yourself and be like, oh, I'm not doing this well. So meeting someone or finding people that aren't afraid to be like, oh yeah, I definitely was having a rough time with this, but I got through it. You doing X, Y, and Z. That's really important. And that's the type of people you should be surrounding yourself with. And also don't be so hard on yourself. It's really easy to be hard on yourself and compare yourself and all of that. But I think the first step to, I guess, recognizing imposter syndrome is seeing who you're being surrounded with, and then kind of relating that back to the confidence you have in your ability and yourself. So it kind of all starts within.
Yeah, Maram, like that's true. Like you shouldn't be too hard on yourself. And actually, kind of touching back to my icebreaker question, that's kind of why I asked like what you guys learn about yourselves during the pandemic. Because another thing that I think most of us can agree with when I say it is that we all kind of learned the importance of self-care during the pandemic, because normally like we're at school or we're at work from, let's say, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and we know like that time that's for work, and then when we come home we have separate leisure time, we have separate time to ourselves. But now that everything is all at once and schedules are kind of haywire, like you have 3 hours of work, for example, and then you have a 1 hour class, or then you have a 1 hour break, and then you're in a meeting, we're always at home. So some people like they find it difficult to distinguish. Like I was one of these people who, like, I found it really difficult to distinguish between times when I should be working and times when like it's okay for me to take a break. So I think that's really important. And I think it was Savera who said that during the pandemic, like we hear about like, oh, this person has picked up this language and has learned this and has like all of these new skills. But like, let's be real, it's so difficult to stay motivated when we don't have a place to go to, or we have nothing to look forward to on the weekend. I mean, some of us, we went without seeing our closest friends for so long. Like I went without seeing like my roommates, or like her, like for example, like literally like I spent every day, every second with her since I was a freshman. And then like for 8 months, couldn't see each other because we live in different places. So it's like it's really difficult when you're taken out of the place where you normally work, and you're put into this environment and you're just expected to carry on.
Yeah, I think this is something that I think Laura had mentioned, doing things or not doing things during the pandemic, and then hearing people do things during the pandemic. Taylor Swift came out with 2 albums during the pandemic, and what did I do? I could barely finish my MP during the pandemic. So yeah, it sometimes feels like that. And I don't know, I feel like even like whatever I did during the pandemic, I just undermined because I'm like, oh, people are so occupied with the pandemic. Nobody cares about this. And if I did, find motivation to try something or do something just because of my inner anxiety of not doing anything, then I would undermine it. So it was just like this weird, insidious cycle of, feeling anxious of not doing anything, doing something, feeling bad about doing it because nobody else is probably doing it, and then feeling anxious to do something else because you feel like what you've done isn't enough. So it was a hot mess. It continues to be a hot mess, but yeah, these are just, things like the imposter syndrome just compound when you have more stress and more anxiety, whether it be from a global pandemic or I guess going back to transitioning to a new place or a new position or a new job. So yeah.
Like what you just said, like right now about, oh, Taylor Swift released 2 albums and what did I do? Like I was like, oh yeah, like I finished EC 313, what an accomplishment. So moving on, like this, I'm actually very interested to hear all of your opinions and stories about, like, have you guys, and I mean this for the men and the males as well, this isn't just for women, have you ever been socially stigmatized, or have you ever feel like you've been put out of place based off your gender? And this can be like a sensitive topic for some people, I know, like sometimes it's a sensitive topic for me as well, but talk about it, like your gender, your race, like anything. Like do you feel like you've faced that in your workplace, some kind of discrimination because you're a woman or because you're a male?
I don't know if I've faced any discrimination per se. I think, at least on my team, I feel very comfortable with all the people that I work with, which I'm very thankful for. But I do work with mostly men. I said that I was hired about 2 years ago, and they did a big hiring push, and I was one of 9 people, I think, and I was the only female, and the rest of them are male. And that's, typical in computer science still to this day. And I don't really know how much we can do since I believe about 20% of computer science majors coming out of college are female. So, you would expect that going into the workplace too. So I don't think I personally have dealt with discrimination, but there are group chats that we have just on the side for fun, and sometimes they're called like the boys and stuff like that. And when I joined, they actually change some of the names to be like the crew instead of the boys, but they'll still, like, when they talk about like all the new people, they'll say it's the boys and stuff like that. And so obviously they're including me. They think that I'm a part of that group, but it's just kind of like something that I'm gonna have to live with until and it's partly because I joined a little later than them. So it was kind of already made, and I don't think they mean it in any discriminatory way. But it's just kind of like something that I don't think they really realize as much as I do.
Yeah, I think sometimes you don't realize you're the only girl in the room, and being in this major. So I don't know, like in high school, I went to a high school that was pretty big in like the STEM. So I was always sort of in it. So I think by the time I got to college, at least I was able to, command attention of a room, regardless if it was all men who didn't care about me or, may not, whatever the case. I was able to like hold my ground pretty well, but I've faced more, discrimination based on everything in college, which I find real strange because, in college you'd expect people to be older, more mature, know more about why things like this is wrong than I did in high school. So I just find that, I don't know, I find that weird and a little interesting. Maybe it's just the sheer amount of people. So I don't know. But that's sort of what I've experienced. And for all my boys in the room, there's something that I know that I really hate that I don't know if it's just who does it, but I think everyone, there's like this joke in the EC department that the boys don't shower and like they're sitting in the lab forever, not taking care of themselves. And, it may be true for some, but it's just like such a weird, stereotype to impose on everyone. I don't know. It just makes me feel bad for them. So I don't know if any of the boys want to comment on that and how it makes them feel. Go for it. Since I know it's a really big, it's maybe one of the only stereotypes about them, but it is the biggest one. And I feel like it's one that would kill somebody's confidence the most in an in-person college situation.
Yeah, I know that for anyone who like isn't familiar with like the stereotype that she's describing here at the U of I, the computer engineering building has showers in the basement. and like the joke stems from those showers, and it's a very insensitive joke. And I mean, I have like so many friends who are in EE and in CE and stuff, and they're really really nice guys, and it can be really insulting and it can be really daunting, especially as a freshman, because I think girls within their field, or like other people, friends within their field, will understand that it's just meant to be a joke. But it's a little bit different when you're meeting someone, I don't know, like anything, someone who's majoring in psychology or economics or something like that, and they go like, "Oh my God, like you're ECE," you know what they say about you. So it can be really daunting. And as a freshman, we interact with all kinds of people. We're taking different classes. We're still trying to figure out like what we like, what we don't like. And I remember when I was a freshman, when I went for like my Calc 2 class, for example, like there were so many girls, and I was like, oh, that's nice. Physics, again, there were quite a few women. And then I enter like one day when I'm conscious of it, and like I look around my ECE class, I'm like, oh my God, there are like two girls in this room. And I think that's like the minute you start to feel uncomfortable about it, is when you look around and you realize, like, oh, I'm the only girl. And that doesn't even come from anything to do with gender. It just comes from, if you're the only anything in a room, you feel like a place of misplacement, or you feel like you don't belong. And that, again, it just drives the imposter syndrome even more without us realizing it. And
Oh,
yeah.
I have a favorite book. Sorry, Maram, I'll make this quick, but I have a favorite book that I read with my kids at the holidays. My family, we don't celebrate Christmas, and so I have this book called The Only One Club. And anyway, it's basically that the story is about how this girl who they're about to make Christmas decorations in class, and she tells her teacher that she doesn't celebrate Christmas. And so I don't remember exactly what the teacher says, but basically she goes home and decides that she's going to create a club that she's the only one of. And anyway, all the kids basically find what is their only one at the end. And so they're all members of the Only One Club. And I think that that's a really important message, that we're all unique and we're all different and we all have something to add. I do find it fascinating to hear you all speak about some of these stereotypes, and just know that none of this stuff changes over time. I was in school a long time ago, and it's just unreal that none of this stuff changes. But I think what has changed is you all being so willing and open to talk about it. And I think that being open and talking about it with your peers, male, female, whatever gender identification, is what will hopefully at some point help to bring some, I don't know if resolution is the word, but impact to all of these issues. So kudos to all of you for that.
I'd love to add a male perspective to that. So you guys can hear me, right? Okay. So I think as a male, I never really understood like that stereotype of like the smelly ECE major. Though I did experience like one or two instances. That's partially because the EC department's ventilation system doesn't work, or like it shuts off if no one's in the room. So like if, let's say, a bunch of people come into the room and then leave, it doesn't really get ventilated. At least that's what my professor explained to me on my first day of class. But looking back at it as a more mature person, I feel like, I mean, hygiene in general, or a lack of hygiene, is also typical of like a symptom of mental illness or depression. So I think like making fun of an entire department of engineering based on like a symptom of mental illness or depression is kind of rude or insensitive. I definitely think there are a lot of people that in EC that overwork themselves to the point where they're basically they're grinding. Like 391, for example, is our classic example. It's the point where they forget to maintain their mental health as well. Also, like going back to the idea of imposter syndrome, I think as a male, I don't think I ever really experienced imposter syndrome until I went to a SWE event that just seemed interesting. And it was like one of the first times of my life that I've actually noticed, like I counted how many other men were there. And it was at that moment that I realized like, oh, this is what ECE women must go through, especially since our department has like, I think 20% women. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Not even. We're at a record high of, I think, what is it? It's either 17 or like 14. So we're doing great. We're reaching new heights for women in DC.
It was really interesting to hear about how you at like a women in engineering event felt like left out, because like you said, that's how we normally feel. And I think that it it's like a change of perspective, and it kind of touches on my next guiding question, which is that like male involvement in these women centered or these women empowering organizations, um it needs it really needs to be increased. Because for example, if like I want to join iRobotics, I don't think to myself, oh, there's so many men. But if a man wants to join VC or come to a VC event, they think, oh, it's kind of weird, like it's women in ECE. But it's not women in EC. We are about women empowerment, and it's the same for like Women in Tech Day. It's the same for Society of Women Engineers. It's the same for Women in Computer Science. All of these organizations, all of these different things. We focus on empowering women, but we welcome male involvement, and we welcome basically anybody to join us. But still, as like as part of VC, like I've seen it, the male involvement is limited to none, in especially in our board and our directors, our chairs. And it's not that we don't want to take men, it's just that we don't get any applying to us. And we try to mention it as much as we can, at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the semester, that hey, we're women in ECE, but we still want males. And like for example, this just happened 2 days ago. I was speaking to Professor Schmidt over here, who's one of the biggest professors in ECE. He's ECE 110 professor, and I spoke to him about hosting VC office hours. And he was like, "Would you be targeting just the women in the class with those office hours, or would this just be a resource for all my students to join?" And like I think it's because people like they have the stigma that women centered or women empowering RSOs are like they're looking to seclude women, when actually we're just looking to include women.
Yeah, this is something I know when we were talking about planning the Lean In for Women in Tech Day. This is something I was really curious about, wondering from some of our corporate members today. I wanted to know how at your companies, for your like Women in Tech orgs, how many of your male co-workers participate in those kind of things, and how involved they are in things like that, like in parallel to what we see in university in women orgs here.
For me, I haven't seen much different. So we have different business councils. So I believe at Motorola Solutions, we have 6 of them. So we have a young professionals group. That is probably the most diverse one, probably because they run some really fun events. And we do get some people that don't necessarily consider themselves as young professionals anymore. But then for the Women's Business Council, I've been to a couple events and I don't think I've even seen one man there. And I think maybe that's because of the name, but it might also be because of the marketing. I think for that specifically, it's they market it as like networking for women within the company. But again, if any man showed up to any of those, they definitely would be welcomed in. And I'm not on the board or anything for that, so I don't know exactly what goes into their marketing for their different events. But I think that a lot of the men at our company maybe just don't understand the events or the what they're trying to get out of it. But yeah, I mean it's really not any different than something that you would see in college, unfortunately.
I can speak to this in the research park. I think we have 2 different kinds of events that we do that gear towards women in tech. I mean, there's more than that, but for all intents and purposes, one of them that we do that was a signature event was a quarterly luncheon. And honestly, we always say we don't check your LinkedIn at the door, but we did preference women mainly just because of a space issue. We had limited space and we wanted it to be sort of an intimate opportunity for women in the research park to get to know each other in a safe environment. But I do think that, to my point, that there are other types of events. I think that that's what's important about these kinds of organizations, is that maybe offering different types of spaces that, you know, not necessarily are exclusive or inclusive, but I'll just give you an example. We've been very intentional about we have a focused, not necessarily a group, but a focused resource for women in entrepreneurship and tech entrepreneurship. But we've been very, very explicit that that group is all about funneling more women into the ecosystem, not necessarily segregating or separating or secluding women. So they just serve different purposes. And I think that that's very important, is when you are doing these. And so to someone's point, I don't remember about, you know, how these things are marketed. I do think that that's a big part of it. And so just being more intentional about who you include in the network and the marketing of it, I do think is important.
Yeah, I guess like that's the key thing, is that because we have the word women in these RSOs or these councils, it's what kind of stigmatizes it, you know, because in something like I used iRobotics as an example, like they don't have male in iRobotics in the word. So I guess because we choose to have the word women, because that is like a big part of what we're about, is empowering women, maybe just marketing it better and making it clear that, you know, males, you're more than welcome to join. And actually I think it helps having a male's perspective, even amongst like a group that's mainly women, just having like a few males. It really helps because like even now, like Tejas's point of view, it was so different from all of ours. Like I didn't know about the ventilation thing. I didn't even think to realize that, oh, like someone like him would experience imposter syndrome coming to women-centered events. So I think that it really helps like broaden our horizons, and like we really like it really gets us thinking, which is like our favorite part about the Lean In here at VC. It's like one of the biggest and most long going events. And because at the beginning it can be kind of awkward, but then as you hear people talk and you hear people's experiences, you want to share your own, which is great. And with that being said, we're actually out of time.
Yeah, so I think this is the official end of the Lean In. But thank you for everyone who came here to share their experiences, and I hope even for those who didn't want to share their experiences, were able to learn a lot about other people's experiences and sort of reflect on their own and see that they're not alone. So and to go back to what Pooja said, I think that's why the Lean-ins are so popular. I may be biased, but I would have to say that the lean-ins are probably just not like only the clubs, but like the department's most like favorite event. Like everybody loves the WEC lean-ins, and now you know why. So thank you all for coming, and I hope everybody was able to learn something. And have a great rest of your day. And I hope to see some of you at the other Women in Tech events that are happening throughout the day.